in it.
Hello and welcome to the Thought League. Today we will focus on the future of the justice system, the aspect of greater access to justice and how technology can really make it easier. We have already seen the advent of virtual courtrooms, and is this really the beginning of a technological transformation to enhance the access to justice through a disruption? To deliberate on this big idea, I have with me today the thought leaders from the world of law, author of Online Courts and Future of the Justice System. Let me welcome Richard Susskind and Cyril Shroff of Cyril, Amarchand, Mangaldas. Gentlemen, so good to have you on CNBC TV 18. Now, Richard, starting with you, and of course you wrote this fascinating book even before we had seen the pandemic time, when online courts, or at least virtual courtrooms, have already become a reality. Is it here to stay, and is the legal system up for a modernization?
There's so many different questions there. I think what we've seen in COVID, unfortunately because of the dreadful ill health that it's bringing, but we've seen people being put under pressure, so they need to change. And in law, it's opened judges and lawyers' minds. It's changed their minds too. It's offered the possibility of resolving disputes in a new way. And so we call these remote courts, the idea that rather than assembling in a physical courtroom, by and large, what we've seen across the world is the conduct of legal disputes by video hearing. Now, I want to say this is, to some extent, a great leap ahead. But for me, it's only the starting point. Simply dropping our existing system into Zoom or some other system is not of itself a transformation, because we've still got the same people, the same expenses, the same delay, and the same process that's not particularly understandable to non-lawyers. So yes, I think it's an acceleration of the acceptance of some change in technology use in the courtroom, but it's only a first step. And in my book, certainly, I anticipate for a wider and far greater change.
Right. And Cyril Shroff, I mean, it is debated that justice is not a place, it's a service. So do you think that it's irrelevant whether or not people congregate in a courtroom? And is the virtual courtroom here to stay even after COVID-19 situation?
Actually, the author of that idea was Richard, when he propounded this thesis that justice is a service and not a place where you go to, and that's how we need to think about it. But what the COVID crisis has done, and the manner in which the judiciary has dealt with this from an online perspective, is to overcome some of the current hindrances and the current challenges by providing access to justice through the online form. But as you said, something fundamentally has still yet to change, because the nature of the process has yet to be re-engineered. So what we have done is, in a loose manner of speaking, put the Civil Procedure Code into Zoom and video formats. So it has certainly been a great thing that the doors of justice are not closed, but a lot more has to happen in order to deal with these issues going forward. And India, as you know, has one of the greatest access to justice problems in the world. Not more than 46% of the global population has access to justice, and 64% of them, I believe, do not have protection of the law. And a large part of those 64 are in India. So lots more needs to be done.
That's right. But it also needs a mindset change besides just adoption of technology. What do you think, Richard? Is the mindset change really coming in the legal system towards this?
The mindset change needs to happen in a number of ways. First of all, in relation to technology, I draw the distinction between automation and transformation. Automation is when you use technology to streamline, improve, optimize, make more efficient the ways we currently work. We graft technology onto our old working practices. And that, frankly, has been what we've done in court technology and legal technology for about 60 years. but it doesn't fundamentally change the way that we work. Transformation through technology, where the technology comes along not to support or enhance our old ways of working, but to displace, replace, and disrupt, is a very different proposition. But the idea there is that we use the power of the technology to allow us to do things that previously weren't possible. So in the past, for example, we've, of course, in physical courtrooms been able to transform them to some extent by using video hearings. But the difficulty there is that the average person doesn't really know what their rights and entitlements are. So simply having the virtual courtroom doors open is not enough. Through transformative technology, we can provide court users with help to understand their rights and entitlement, help to understand the options available to them, help with formulating their arguments, help with organizing their evidence. Now, none of this is possible in the traditional system, but it's all possible today through transformative technology. So the mindset shift we need is not to think that the role of technology is simply to streamline or turbocharge the way we've always worked. It's to allow us to increase reach, to increase access, not by optimizing, but by delivering and offering new forms of justice service.
That's right. So it's the evolved area of technology to be used and not just functional for really reaching out while you're working from home. We'll delve deeper into that, Richard. But I have a question for Cyril Shroff, who mentioned that access to justice in India is one of the lowest in the world. And we need to address that also by way of technology, which is really giving us so many solutions in different fields. So Cyril Shroff, Niti Aayog came up with online dispute resolution report, and there is an online mechanism for that. What is it that we are looking at now?
So I believe that there is great momentum, and there is a kind of a loose but broad alliance already between the government, represented here by Niti Aayog, by the judiciary, and by the private bar as well, that something needs to be done. The problem is too huge, and it is having an impact on our economic growth. So we aspire to be the third largest economy in the world in a decade or so. And that means investing in getting in international capital, getting in technology, and there has to be progress along various lines. That aspiration and that dream cannot coexist with such an inefficient system of justice. So there is an economic as well as a social imperative for making this happen, and that is driving things like the Niti Aayog's ODR report. So and it's not the first time that this theme has been talked about. The Indian government and the judiciary has been trying to solve this problem through many tools over the last 2 decades or so, whether it is pro-arbitration culture, whether it's tribunalization and special courts, online courts and e-filings, and now the ODR report. So the ODR report also is in kind of various phases. It will have, and it will deal with a variety of problems. I think the nature of the problem and the dispute is also very important. What is the first expectation is that once the pandemic settles a bit, we're going to have a tsunami of pandemic or COVID-related cases, which could be at the individual level, it could be corporate, it could be business. So that's the first new problem that we have to deal with. And ODR, which we'll talk about it in more detail, has many dimensions to it, which will provide some of the solutions. But these are not mutually exclusive. They're all incremental to the basic sort of justice system, whether it's a physical one or an online version of it.
Right. But I want to ask you a basic question. We have an issue of the load of cases that our Indian justice system really cannot deal with. So is the online setup, the virtual courtroom setup, going to resolve for that particular issue as well? And what have been the practical issues that you have faced in a virtual courtroom so far?
So online dispute resolution is not a magic wand which is going to make the millions of cases disappear. That's not going to happen. But it is going to reduce some of it. And in certain types of disputes, smaller disputes, more routine disputes, whether they be traffic offenses or e-commerce claims or small disputes, some of them can be automated or done through the ODR mechanism. And whilst they all add numbers to the case count, they can be resolved in a more process-oriented way. There have been many challenges, starting from access to Wi-Fi, access to technology, the perception that there is a class difference between
Sure.
lawyers who have access to technology
Sure.
and those who don't. So there's the social overlay as well. But overall, it has been a positive, and I think full credit to the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, which has been passionately driving this theme. Personally, I think that the judiciary has accepted the new reality faster than the private bar.
Right. So that's about where we are right now in the usage of technology in the legal system, the access to justice system. But Richard, what are the futuristic thoughts? Fields of medicine, education, financial services, credit rating, all of them have used data science and artificial intelligence to go a level higher, to evolve higher. Do you see that also happening in the legal system, and what are we looking at there?
Absolutely. As long ago as the 80s, I wrote my PhD, believe it or not, at Oxford University on artificial intelligence and law. And so I've been spending my whole career thinking about this. But it's only now we're in the 20s that I believe this technology will be of practical impact. I should say immediately, though, that I believe a lot of the short-term claims being made about the use of AI in law overstate its likely impact. Whereas, however, and this is more important, most of the long-term predictions about the impact of AI hugely understate its impact. Will AI fundamentally change the courts within the next couple of years? Of course not. By 2030, yes, I think quite considerably around the world. So how might this work? Well, there's two sorts of AI involved here. On the one hand, there'll be AI, as I mentioned earlier, to help court users to understand their entitlements, diagnostic systems which will identify for non-lawyers their legal position. So that's one category. But the more interesting and the more controversial use of AI is actually in decision making. So the question that's often asked of me is, can machines replace judges? Now, if that's a question that's asking, can a machine behave like, think like, operate like a human judge? The answer to that is absolutely not. Machines don't have the neurophysiology, the neuropsychology of human beings.
Yes.
So we're not at a stage just now where in any sense machines could replace the way lawyers or judges think or reason or come to decisions.
All right.
However,
Yes.
There is another possibility. One of the most interesting emerging uses of AI and machine learning in law is systems that can predict the outcome of the decisions of courts. And some of these systems can predict the outcomes more accurately than human lawyers. They do so to a very high degree. In a way, let's not worry about how they do that. Let's just accept for a second that we've got increasingly capable systems that are becoming better and better at this. And very often they're the large volumes of fairly low value cases. I'm not saying they're not important to people who are involved, but if these cases are never going to be resolved, we need to think radically.
So, Richard, you have ventured into a very, very gripping, topic over there, and man versus machine has been the big buzzword right now. And you're now talking about prediction, and that could be based on the precedents that anyways law is based on, most judgments are based on. So I'll request you to hold your thought there and come back with more. We'll slip into a short breather, but remember, we will discuss more on upgrading the justice system and also tech-enabled decision-making that Richard was talking about, and its scope as well as its risks and threats. After a very short break on the Thought League, stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the Thought League and we are discussing the future of justice system. And before we went into a break, Richard was talking about a very gripping thought of replacing the judge by predictive analysis done through algorithms. Let me throw that question to Cyril Shroff. We have had this discussion in the past, Cyril Shroff, about man versus machine. Do you think in the legal system the judges can be replaced by these algos and the data analysis done by them by prediction based on the precedents of past cases?
Of course not. So that's never going to happen in terms of replacing human judges
Sure.
and the sense of judgment that a human being can bring to sort of decide on the facts of the case and do justice. However, the trends that Richard mentioned, which are based on data analytics, can have a number of practical implications. One of which is in the sphere of third party finance or litigation finance, because that's a big emerging trend and a topic for another day. But litigation financiers who kind of treat sometimes litigation as a corporate finance product, they go by these predictions, and that's the basis on which they make their decisions on whether to back a case or not. That's one. The second, I think it can have a big impact on the mediation culture, a thought that Richard was building up on where you actually present the reality to somebody of one of the parties and say, look, you've got a 97% chance of losing. Do you want to settle? So hopefully this kind of data analytics and the kind of culture that flows out of that can drive a mediation first culture, which is probably the need of the hour. If you've got 30 million plus cases and it is humanly impossible, no matter what you do, to resolve them through the normal justice system, why not give mediation a break and make it more center stage and mainstream? I think that that is the opportunity for innovation and data of the kind that Richard mentioned, provided by technology. And it's not just precedents, it's really about the combination of factors, the nature of the dispute, the identity of the parties.
Sure.
The
Many
technology
factors, not
considers a
just
number of
precedents.
factors and
Yes.
makes a prediction.
Yes. Yes.
And it's proven. I've seen it work.
Okay, so it works, but humans cannot be replaced. Richard, that's a word coming in from Cyril Shroff. But I want,
Well, can I come back on
yes,
that?
sure.
I think it's to ask the wrong question to ask if humans can be replaced. And because for the very reasons I'm saying, these machines can't outperform human beings. The question is there a role for the state in delivering a different kind of binding determination, not mirroring a human decision-making process, but by using some kind of predictive technology? And one answer to that is, well, that's a kind of ADR, alternative dispute resolution. It's a kind of mediated answer. But I think where Cyril and I, if we do disagree, I go maybe a step further and say, I could regard this not just as akin to the outcome of a mediation, which isn't of itself binding, but the challenge I'm putting down is whether or not, perhaps even more like an arbitration award, we could have it as a binding determination. But the question of whether or not it's replacing human beings and reasoning like judges is to some extent a red herring. My question is, are there different ways that the state can enable people's problems to be sorted with some kind of authoritative force?
Sure.
And these predictive systems, whether it be a mediation or an informal determination, seem to me to be a strong candidate. But I'm also not saying that this is coming around the corner over the next couple of years. I'm projecting later in this decade. And it's the same in medicine, it's the same in audit, it's the same across all sorts of different professions.
That's right. And Richard, I get your point, but I wanted to get to that, hot topic of discussion, basically, when we talk about predictive analysis as well as the usage of data. But you also have mentioned in your book about various other innovative aspects when it comes to the use of technology in the legal system. That could be online courts, extended courts, as well as also asynchronous processes.
Yes, the asynchronous process. Asynchronicity is a concept from the world of communication. A synchronous communication is a communication where both communicating people need to be available at the same time. So if you and I have a phone call, or if we have a meeting, or we speak by video link, that's synchronous because we both need to be present or available at the same time. But there's another form of communication which is known as asynchronous. And that's like an email or a text message where you both communicate at your convenience. You don't need to be available at the same time. Now, what I'm arguing is for a form of online judging, and forget artificial intelligence just now. I'm having the idea here of human judges but communicating with parties asynchronously. So the idea is that there's no hearing at all, no oral evidence, no physical hearing room. What happens is that the parties submit their evidence and arguments in written form. There's some kind of online dialogue, very crudely speaking, like an exchange of emails. And then the judge, human judge, not AI, human judge, delivers the decision back in electronic form. But at no stage do the parties assemble together, either online or in a physical courtroom. You don't need to take a day off work. You can work as a judge from your kitchen table in the evening. You can participate as a party from the coffee house down the road. It's an entirely new and different and flexible approach. And you asked earlier about how we meet the backlog. I think one of the problems with the backlog, if we're using video hearings, is precisely that that's a form of synchronous communication. It requires everybody to be aligned and set up. And so often, for one reason or another, this results in a waste of time. It consumes time. And as I say, people have to take time off work. Why can't we make the process more convenient? I'm not saying for all cases, but for many low-value cases, this is a less forbidding and more, I think, convenient way of resolving low-value disputes.
That's right, Richard. But Cyril, Shroff, I'll let you have the last word. When we talk about access to the justice system, convenience, speedy justice, as well as lower cost is extremely important. How futuristic are these thoughts that are coming up, and how realistic is this idea, and what could be the challenges in really getting them on board as a reality?
So my belief, and I'm an optimist, is that the iron is hot. There is political imperative for this. The very fact that Niti Aayog has put out an ODR report is evidence of that. I think the judiciary is also ready. The speed at which they embraced online courts is a proof point. I think the litigant is ready as well. They're quite fed up of the old system, and they have been really suffering. Whether it's a small litigant or whether it's a corporate litigant, no litigant is happy in this country. So if these are the factors of which are factors are at play, I think the iron is hot. And I don't think these ideas are unrealistically futuristic. They are futuristic for sure, but they are realistically futuristic. And it's a journey. I don't think there is a magic wand which is going to resolve all of this in the next 6 months or 12 months. But once you begin the journey and start clawing away bit by bit onto the elephant-sized problem, you will get somewhere. And currently that is not happening. So I'm very hopeful that we are on the threshold of a major transformation.
That's right. In fact, Cyril, Shroff, we think that the present changing time and the disruptive times that we have seen has brought probably the future of digital technology closer to us in every which way. So, of course, we are more positive about that. But Richard, Susskind, many thanks for your big ideas on the future of justice system, and thanks so much, Cyril Shroff, for putting so much insight into the reality and the practicality of the big ideas that have been developed. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on CNBC TV 18. And like financial services, credit rating system, medical assessment, educational system, legal system is also headed for a disruption, and so far we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. So the delivery of justice online and extended courts, as well as artificial intelligence-based judgment, may not be far in this fast-changing digital world, is the verdict from the thinkers and experts in the legal space. With that, it's a wrap on the Thought League.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.